Hi, I'm MTG and welcome to my channel. Today we're going to be opening up a set booster pack where I'm going to pick a legendary creature to build around for a EDH deck tech. I always like doing this because it's a fun way to kind of get to know the set a little better and, check out the pretty art and just, I don't know, I like opening packs with people who appreciate Magic because it's fun to be excited about stuff, especially if there's any good pulls. But before we jump into opening the pack, I just want to say thank you to Wizards of the Coast for sponsoring this video. And what does that mean? Well, it means that, I get to do cool stuff through the Ambassador program with a sponsorship, and that you can help out the channel if you go to the link below in the description and pre-order, or I guess not pre-order anymore because it's probably going to be out by the time y'all see this, but at least order stuff for the set, specifically Lost Caverns of Ixalan, if you click on the link below. Again, helps me out a lot, and also just the Ambassador program in general. So yeah, anyways, enough plugs, and let's go ahead and check out the cool stuff we open in this pack. I will see you in a second. Alright friends, today we are going to be opening up this set pack where, again, hoping that I can craft something cool or get inspired by something to build a deck around from the set. So, with no further ado, let's go ahead and crack this open. And let's see how much I struggle to open a package every time. Move my keyboard out of the way. Y'all need to see that. Didn't help that my cat also just laid down on my desk, so it's just covered in fuzz. The first thing that we're looking at here is the skeleton pirate token. That is quite cool. It's a little tutu buddy. Is there anything on the back? Ooh, some cool pretty text there. I honestly super love the art for this. That's really pretty. So it's that buddy there. And then we have Tectonic Hazard, which is, you can see, there we go. It's a little bit more clear down here, actually. Tectonic Hazard deals 1 damage to each opponent and each creature they control. That reminds me of, I think it was a spell in like Innistrad, had a similar effect. Oh, and we hit into our first rare. We have Molten Collapse, and I'll try to put the cards up on the screen too. For some reason, it's like more clear down here, so we'll just leave it like that, I guess. Played around with some new camera settings, trying to make it less blurry, but Molten Collapse, 2 CMC, and choose one. If you've descended this turn, you may choose both instead. If you descended, or you descend if a permanent card was put into the graveyard from anywhere. So like discard, sacrifice stuffs. That's pretty cool. Destroy target creature or planeswalker, and then you can destroy target non-creature, non-land permanent with mana value 1 or less. That seems like an interesting removal. I'll put that there in the rare pile. Ooh. And here's our first legendary creature we can build around. It is, and I'm so sorry, I know I'm botching probably most of the pronunciations here, but Caparocti Sunborn? I hope I didn't mess that up. Caparocti. They are 4 CMC, have a 4/4 power toughness here, and whenever they attack, you may tap 2 untapped artifacts and creatures you control, and if you do, discover 3. That seems pretty interesting. I do really love the art for this. That's super pretty. I'll put that down here just because it's a possible build around for a deck tech or whatever. Then we have Contested Game Ball, which is fun. I was thinking the movie Road to El Dorado. So it's 2 CMC whenever you've dealt combat damage to the attacking player. Or sorry, I can't read apparently. Whenever you're dealt combat damage, the attacking player gains control of this contested game ball and untaps it, and then you can pay to draw a card and put a point counter on it, and then if it has 5 or more point counters, sacrifice and create a treasure token. So that's kind of fun. Makes me think a little bit of like, was it Coveted Jewel? The one that lets you draw like 3 cards if you attack someone who owns it or something like that. So I'll put that here. This is really cool looking. Harmonic Nautilus, it's 2 CMC, has Vigilance. K2 can get pumped for +3/-3 until end of turn, and it's a 1/4. That seems pretty interesting. Artifact creature. We have Cavernous Maw. Turns into a 3/3 bonker if you pay 2 mana, and it's a cave. So there's some interesting cave synergies with this set. Then we hit into Ukenbenbach, the Great Mistake. Mood. Anyways, 5 CMC Demir, Skeleton, or Spooky Time. So they have Vigilance, Menace, they're 6/4, and then if you have Descend 8, you can pay 4 colorless, a blue and a black to return this little mistakey boy from the graveyard to the battlefield with a finale counter on it, and activate only if there are 8 or more permanent cards in your graveyard. So that's the Descend 8 piece of that. And then if a creature with a finality counter on it would die, exile it instead. Don't know how I feel about that as like a build around for a commander, but here we are. And then we have Envoy of Onik Aho. Sorry, so bad pronouncing any magic name. So they're 3 CMC, a 3/3, pay 5, make a little, know me buddy. That seems alright. It's a little expensive for that ability. We have Frilled Caveworm, 4 CMC, Salamanda. I should have had my Axicotl playmat down to match the theme. They have Descend 4. Frilled Caveworm gets +2/+0 as long as there are 4 more permanent cards in your graveyard. Seems more like a limited card again. Quicksand Whirlpool, cost 6 total. It's an instant, 3 less to cast if it targets a tapped creature and you exile them. Seems like another limited kind of card. Son of Stupefaction. So we have Enchant Creature or Vehicle, and when it enters the battlefield, you mill 2 cards. And then Enchanted Permanent gets -X, -O, where X is the number of permanent cards in your graveyard. And then we hit Promising Vein, which is 1, tap, search your library for a basic land, put it on the battlefield, tap, then shuffle. And it can tap for a colorless too. Seems alright. Then we have our pretty art card. Yeah, so we didn't really have, unless I'm missing something, a lot of super great stuff in this pack, did we? We kind of whiffed a bit. We only have 2 legendaries we can build around. So, I guess I'll probably pick this buddy here, just because I think there's some interesting synergies with like artifacts and stuff that we can do. So, let's build around Caparocti Sunborn. And I don't know, let's check out the shenanigans we can do. Alright friends, we are ready to start building. Gotta cannot pronounce this commander's name. Well, I'll just say Sunborn. So recap on what they are. 4 CMC, whenever they attack you may tap 2 untapped artifacts and or creatures you control. If you do, discover 3. And there are 4 power and toughness. So just looking at this commander, I think Discover is going to be an incredibly powerful effect, and I kind of think in some ways it's a little bit better than Cascade. So if you don't know what the Discover mechanic is, it is where you exile cards from the top of your library until you exile a non-land card with mana value X or less. Cast it without paying its mana cost or put it into your hand, then you put the rest on the bottom of your library in random order. So the reason why I think this is slightly better than Cascade is because you can put things into your hand instead of choosing not to cast it and putting that value somewhere else into your library if it has to go to like the bottom of your library. Whereas like being able to put something into your hand is quite nice, especially if you know that there's something out there that counters free spells like Boromir, where you're going to try to cast it and then Sadness on the stack, versus where you could just put it into your hand and then, hard cast it later when you're ready for that. I also think too, like, for when I was like cascading before in previous games, I like with the tallies trigger, for example, where you're just exiling stuff off the top of your library, it can be kind of like a feels bad moment if you hit something that's like your win con, like a Chroma's Will, and you're not really ready to use it, but you don't want it to go to waste or you don't want to lose it to your library. It's nice just to be able to put that into your hand again, so when you're ready to cast it, that's really huge. So again, enough about rambling with the Discover stuff. But I do think like your commander being able to discover 3 is huge, because you could potentially hit into creatures that are your win cons that will feed really well into what your commander strategy is, or just bring out additional value like your mana rocks and stuff like that. So looking at like kind of how I wanted to build this commander, I could see some fun things with like dealing non-combat damage through ETB triggers from like artifacts or creatures. So maybe you're making a lot of tokens from ETB effects, so you could make like goblin tokens or something else like that and have like some sort of impact tremor effect. Or what I was thinking too, because this kind of mentioned artifacts, that maybe I want to do artifact creatures or just artifacts in general. Having things like Reckless Fireweaver is really cool, because whenever an artifact enters the battlefield under your control, deals 1 damage to each opponent. But this is also 2 CMC, so the chances are like you could, discover into your Reckless Fireweaver, which could be a huge way to do a lot of damage to your opponents. And other things like Ingenious Artillerist, where whenever 1 or more artifacts enter the battlefield under your control, deals that much damage to each opponent. And something that I'm going to think is going to be huge for synergizing with this commander is Alabu Ancient Witness. They're 5 CMC. Other artifact creatures you control have haste, but what we're looking at here is whenever 1 or more artifact creatures you control attack. So you don't have to attack with Alabu. It deals X damage to any target, and you scry X, where X is the number of tapped artifact creatures you control. So I like this because you can just hit your opponent's face for damage and stuff like that, but then you're also getting card advantage. But your commander is also going to be feeding into Alabu's ability, because let's say you have like clue tokens or treasure tokens, you can attack with your commander, tap those tokens, and then when Alabu triggers, that's adding more things onto potential, the X value there. So that seems like really cool high synergy card. And I do see a case here for building like an equipment deck if you want. I know Boros is set up really well for that, but I'm not really huge on equipment decks. I find them kind of boring, though I do understand there could be some like satisfaction with just a one giant bonk, but I feel like it's one of those strategies where you put all your eggs in one basket, and then if someone Vandal blasts you, it's just a sad time, versus if you're just making like lots of tokens and doing kind of more like impact tremor effects. It doesn't matter as much with like trying to punch through your opponent if you can just deal a lot of damage without necessarily having to attack, which I feel like you see a lot in red, like Rakdos colors and stuff like that too, where you're just able to ping your opponents for a lot of damage. So that's kind of what I was hoping to lean into a little bit more here, where again, I think you're going to get some really cool value overall is leaning into like discover effects. So things like Brass Tunneler's Grinder is really cool, because when it ETBs, it's basically a Valakut Awakening on ETB, where you can discard any number of cards, and then you put that many +1 into your hand. And then at the beginning of the end step, you've descended this turn, you put a counter on it, and then it flips into a land that basically, if you use the mana for it, it lets you not cascade, but discover again. So it's just a lot of value attached to one artifact. And I think that's really great, because you can also tap this artifact and it won't lose like any sort of consequential like value here, which I think is going to be pretty powerful. And then a new card that seems really fun, like it's super pricey mana-wise, but goodness gracious, does it just seem like a fun card to try out. Hit the Motherlode. It is 7 CMC, discover 10. If the discovered card's mana value is less than 10, create the number of tapped artifact tokens equal to the difference. So I'm just imagining like, okay, you cast this, you discover 10, you hit maybe something that's like 4 CMC, that's a really good card for you, and then, oh cool, now you make like 6 treasures, which seems really amazing, or I guess maybe that's 3 because it has to be a value less, I believe, but regardless, that's a lot of value. Putting something out for free and then making treasures for the difference is pretty darn good, I think. And another card that I'm super excited about that does discover as well is Quintoris Khan. 5 CMC, whenever you cast a spell from exile, deals 2 damage to each opponent, you gain 2 life, so kind of lean into the non-combat damage stuff again. You can create a token when it ETBs, so it already allows you to protect it, but it's a +1 ability where a lot of planeswalkers do minus when you try to activate their protection spell, but this one is, it ticks up when you're creating spirits. And then the -3 ability is Discover 4, which is super cool. The other thing too that I think makes sense in this deck is adding some sort of like damage doubler. Red has a lot of those. Usually it's like if a red source would deal, X damage or something, add 2 more damage or double the damage or triple the damage. So I think there's a place for that in this deck too. Some of my favorite win cons just in general are going to be things like a Chrome as well, because I do a lot of stuff through combat damage. But I think it kind of depends like what way you want to lean with, your commander strategy here. Do you want to do non-combat damage? Do you want to do equipment deck? Do you, I don't know, want to just make a lot of artifact creatures and hit face and do it that way. Kind of depends on what your strategy is. Again, for me, I think if I'm really going to dig down on this deck list, I'm probably going to lean more into like non-combat kind of impacty tremor effects. But I did put together a list. It's not really a final copy or anything. It's just kind of a brainstorm while I was thinking about some cool cards, because it's kind of hard to narrow down at this point which ones that, I don't know, I think I need to sub out or anything, just because there's a lot of really interesting things happening in the format. So it's just a concept if you're thinking about building with this commander. I hope you find that helpful. The deck list will be in the description below. Yeah, so hope you guys enjoyed the video. Please leave a comment if you want me to keep doing stuff like this. It's pretty fun to just, I don't know, open a pack and then try to build something random out of what you pull. But yeah, thank you so much for watching. Have a good one, and bye.